tell us, what is Arena, formerly LM Arena?
Arena is a company dedicated towards measuring intelligence. So what we do is we run a benchmarking platform. It's a live evaluation, unlike any other evaluations, where real users, tens of millions of them, are coming to our site, arena.ai, using AI for their daily work tasks, whether they're doing software engineering or legal tasks, medical tasks, writing, and so on. And in so doing, they're giving us feedback that we use to construct a public leaderboard that's shaping the future of the AI industry.
So I think a lot of us will know Arena and LM Arena from that leaderboard that we've all been refreshing to see every time a new model comes out, who is on top in terms of text and video and audio and stuff like that. How do you actually make money?
The way we make money is by helping labs and enterprises evaluate models pre-release, or AI systems pre-release. So what happens is that during the course of developing a model, before, let's say, labs want to release it to the public, they might want to try it out on some users, to get the distribution of real world use and see how well they're doing and try to understand its strengths and weaknesses, know how to improve. Whether that be, hey, this model's not so good at math, and then they maybe go and collect more math data to try to improve it, or whether that's coding data, trying to understand where maybe it's making errors, maybe it's making code that doesn't compile, maybe not solving users' tasks. We help them understand this on the distribution of our real users through these cloaked models with these code names, and that's a service that we offer to providers to help
So
them.
these are like the major AI labs basically are your customers.
Major AI labs and also enterprises. Yes.
Okay.
You should
So
know
this
though that the public leaderboard, the one that you see on arena.ai/leaderboard, never touches money.
right.
Model providers cannot pay to be on the leaderboard. They can't pay to be off the leaderboard. They can't pay to change their score. And all public models are evaluated according to the same open source methodology that you can see on our GitHub. You can go to our Arena rank repo, and it shows you exactly how we take the public's votes and we turn them into scores. This
Right.
procedure only applies to pre-release or cloaked models where providers are trying to sort of predict how well they would do if they were to release their model.
Got it. So this is kind of like, the church and state sort of system you have to have here, which is that your B2B business, which is helping these AI labs assess their models pre-release. I mean, it sounds like that has to and is completely separate from once they are released, then you have another team or, another operation basically, which is allowing people to rank them. I mean, one cannot really talk to the other.
Well, I think the neutrality is driven by people's faith in our scientific rigor. We're all former academics. Myself, my co-founders Wei Lin and Jan, come from Berkeley, where we were running this project as PhD students. Well, Jan was our professor, but Wei Lin and I were PhD students at the time, and just thinking about, hey, how do we do this? Like, it was at the time of ChatGPT. And nobody really knew how to compare it to language models. You would put them on static benchmarks like, an MMLU or something, and it'd be like, oh, well, model A is better at taking the tests than model B, but then you put them in users' hands, like you try to chat with them, and it all, basically fails. It's like you can't talk to this model, and it's clearly so dumb. So what we did in order to fix that, and it wasn't just us, it was a large group of students at Berkeley, is create this arena type system that kind of became, the gold standard way that such chat systems are evaluated and has sort of propelled to this point. We remain very scientifically oriented. We continue to publish papers on our methodology.
Right.
Again, like with the very open source, you know, system. And by the way, if you think about our incentives commercially, trust is at the center of it, because if any model provider starts feeling like, hey, these guys are not in the game to be neutral, and if it's not a neutral playing field, then the whole platform loses everything. So
Right.
I would say that's one of the incentives also keeping us neutral.
What do you see as the future of your business then in an environment where these models become a little more commoditized? And by that I mean, there's this whole discussion around right now today. the labs are all fighting with each other to have the best model. And every time a release comes out, everyone rushes to the benchmarks to see how they're performing. But look, there has been a discussion around 3, 4, 5 years from now. Will the competitiveness start to converge a bit, and will you really differentiate yourself based on the application that is installed in a world where the models do come commoditized? And what is the future of your business?
Well, let's distinguish between two things. There's the models becoming commoditized, and then there's the space fragmenting. So models can become commoditized while the space also fragments. And by that, I mean the cost of sort of the margin of inference can be driven to zero. But at the same time, what can happen is that different providers and different, models are good at different things. And that's kind of the world that we see ourselves going towards. Cost of inference certainly going down. Um, a lot of these companies are talking about driving the cost of intelligence to zero, making sure that you can have like intelligence in your pocket. It's at essentially free cost, too cheap to meter, blah, blah, blah. But also, we're seeing that different providers are starting to specialize in different things. So, as an example, like the consumer war is kind of being fought right now between ChatGPT and Gemini. But the enterprise war is certainly being, it's not necessarily being led by Anthropic in terms of dollars, but Anthropic is kind of positioning themselves there in the market and growing quite quickly. And so if you believe in a world where many flowers will bloom and there's a huge amount of space for AI to, capture dollars everywhere in the economy, then the natural incentive for these companies will be to sort of tile up the space and fragment. And in that kind of world, our business is actually quite valuable because we can solve that fragmentation problem for users. We can help
But
people
but 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 you don't
understand.
you don't think all the models in the long run will sort of become, an Anthropic coding model against OpenAI's coding model, et cetera? I mean, right now the rivalry that we hear about is which company has the best model for the particular use case that you're talking about. I mean, my read on the discussions was that in the long run, the cost of inference will come down, as you're saying. Also, it won't really matter who has a better model, because the differences will become marginal in some ways. It sounds like you're saying that you don't think that the differences will become
I
marginal.
don't think the differences will be marginal. It's difficult, part of the issue is that it's difficult to personalize to people's taste. And so all these models are going to have different tones. It'd be like saying humans will commoditize. It's like, yes, the models will become more and more intelligent. Okay, they might be, but there's not a one-dimensional axis called intelligence that these models are going to commoditize under. You go to different people and you like different people different amounts. It's like they might all be smart, but the way they talk to you, the way they present information, the particular set of skills that they have, are they more geared towards this or are they more geared towards that? Let's say I'm writing a scientific paper. Maybe I prefer the sort of way that the paper is being written by one model versus another. Maybe one model has a more empirical taste. Maybe I find it to be more careful in experiments, whereas the other one maybe is more theoretical. It's just like these issues of taste are going to matter so much to the future of AI, and it's going to need likely human in the loop workflows. And by the way, expanding the platform that we have towards agents. So
Yeah,
going even beyond the model and
and
thinking about how
assessing
all
the,
of these
the the agents
interact.
then, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and human
Th-
in the loop. And that's where our platform has a particular advantage because we have tens of millions of users here that want to use the most cutting edge agents to do their jobs.
So now on the human in the loop piece, and this is slightly different piece, but after the models are released, then we know that reinforcement learning and human feedback is becoming increasingly important to helping to tune these models. How does your business then fit into that story, and how do you sort of connect to that phenomenon?
Well, I think the story that we are seeing slowly play out in, all of the AI story is that every real environment is becoming an RL system, right? Whether that's Salesforce, whether that's Arena, whether that's, a little environment that an RL environment company makes and sells to a lab, um, or whether that's the real world via, a robot going around picking stuff up and seeing whether it can actually perform tasks. The purpose of Arena And the reason why it's such a valuable platform is because it represents real users. It is always live. By winning on the arena, a model is able to predict the future because it's able to predict which answer a human will like better. It's able to give them what they want for a new user coming in with a new question. And ultimately, it's interacting with reality. And reality is impossible to game.
Right,
That
right.
is the future that I see. Benchmarks moving away from these sort of static benchmarks where it's just a list of questions in a test, and then you see the test once and it's over. You've kind of memorized the answers, and towards a live platform where you're really measuring utility to real people, them in the loop doing their work with you.
Let me ask you one last question before you go, which is we see the models getting better and better, and we see them on the leaderboard as well, companies moving up and down. That is a very different story from AI adoption in the enterprise, which is a much slower moving story. What do you think are the core reasons that AI adoption hasn't taken off the way people would have hoped in the enterprise? And yet on your leaderboard, we see models getting better. I mean, they're getting so much better, right? We saw with 5.3, 4.6, they can do things they can't already do. Why?
Well, let's just, make one thing clear. Enterprise adoption, although sort of lagging behind consumer adoption, is not exactly slow. There's a lot of enterprises that are
Maybe
adopting
compared to what
fast.
investors are hoping for.
Exactly. So, it's not like the ecosystem is like sluggish and, whatever. This is the fastest moving economic trend that I've certainly seen in my lifetime and probably that anybody has seen. And the models are really continuing to improve. The gains are substantial. We saw it, last week with Opus 4.6 that model has had so substantial leap in coding performance and in general performance over the last generation of models from Anthropic. And um, so the purpose of this leaderboard, and so okay, why is enterprise adoption moving slowly? You can actually look at surveys of this, and the number one issues relate to reliability. It's, am I able to safely deploy this model? Am I able to, you know, predict how well it's going to do on my users? Am I able to upgrade it? Am I able to understand whether it's going to be compliant with all the rules that I have in place? And sort of, can I measure its performance and continually improve it on my users? These are a lot of questions that enterprises are asking, which is why enterprise evaluation, which is yet another area that I think Arena is positioned well to attack, is poised to be one of the most important problems of the enterprise adoption um, story.
Great. Well, Anastasios, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Anastasios Angelopoulos, CEO and co founder of Arena here on TI TV.